Okay, so back to some ideas. Edward Said, again, has lots of different ideas. Some are on the fringe, some have become mainstream. And out of his idea of Orientalism, he really started talking about Orientalisms because the way the West interacts with Japan, the way they interact with Korea, South Korea, North Korea, Vietnam versus the Middle East, North Africa, all is a little bit different. So there's different Orientalisms out there. But and that particular interview came post 9/11, so there was a lot of obviously there was a lot of scrutiny for Muslims and Middle Easterners. So it was an important time frame that he was able to look at again the idea of Orientalism. An idea that I think is important to keep and not to throw everything out with some of his ideas if you decide not to, buy into some of his ideas. One aspect is the idea of the other with a capital O. And this is the idea that he brought about in saying that this is how we're able to view other cultures. So he says that the Oriental, however we define it, is portrayed as an other, creating a culture that is an object, lacking humanism. So it's important that when we are looking at other cultures, that we other them, it's often used as a verb, so that we make them less than we are. And that was an important Western goal because when Britain and France were going and colonizing Indochina and British Palestine, there was, how do you go and take over another country and say, we're better than you are? Well, you have to believe that. You have to believe that we are. Our system is better than yours. Yours is less than ours. And by doing that, Edward Said said this is a process called othering. This is what he names it. And so by looking at a group, instead of looking at them as individuals who may be different from one another, we put them in a community, and then we decide that that community is less than our community. And so this is very well accepted. This is a mainstream idea, whether people agree with Edward Said or not. Everyone agrees with this idea of othering. And when we view different people as the other, we objectify them. And this allows us to use our biases and our preconceived notion, and we elevate ourselves as superior to that of the other. So that's really the important aspect of taking out of Edward Said's ideas. I'm not having you read a lot of, any of his material, really going into a lot of stuff. There's a lot out there. But the basic idea is this other, that when we perceive not individuals, so this is kind of going over the past 2.5 weeks of things that we've been doing, that we look at identity, who we are as individuals. Then we're looking at how we fit together within groups and within communities. And again, that often brings us together, but that also allows us to look at other people differently. So his argument, for example, Muslims, would be that we automatically put them as a community of terrorists. That's what Muslim means, is that the membership is all Muslims and they're terrorists. And so he goes through those 4 steps, and he says the outcome is that we just see them as terrorists. We don't see them as individuals, and that way we can say that they are less than we are. What I'm now going to ask you to do is start thinking about this not in terms of the black and white, whatever your political affiliation may be with, whatever Americans versus Arabs, or Christians, Judeo-Christians versus Muslims, but let's think of it in terms of the Doctor Who community, because this is just ripe for the picking with this idea of othering, because now we're not going to have a group of humans who are having to make sometimes arbitrary distinctions between one group and another. If you think of Korea, they're Koreans, and there's this arbitrary distinction between North Koreans and South Koreans. And when we look at planets, when we look at galaxies, when we look at the universe, then there's a lot more to it, because now we can talk about species. We can talk about whole groups. And so how is it that we have one group, viewing another, and othering them? So Orientalism was written to show the impact of mystifying or making myths or generalizations about the other. We can extrapolate this about the other, and then we can apply it. So again, it's the idea of how is it that there are certain groups in the Doctor Who universe that are viewing other groups as others. So that is what the second assignment is for you to look at. And so I want you to go back into Blackboard, if I am able to get there. And under lecture questions, there again are the two. The Doctor Who community, you'll go through and decide who makes up the Doctor Who community. And now you're going to go into the other. And I want you to address instances of othering in Doctor Who. You should be able to give at least 3 examples. I mean, just thinking about it right now, I can come up with 4 or 5 without much thought, and there's a lot more I'm sure of. And again, this is a class blog, so other people will be able to see what you're writing, because you're going to have different groups for different reasons. And so I don't want you to just say, number 1, Daleks, number 2, this. You need to say why they are othering the group. So why is it that one particular species others another? First, you need to identify who they're othering and why. Again, this is not going to be long and drawn out. You're not going to write paragraphs on this, but it does need to be more than one word. You would need to say who it is that the Daleks other and why. Why is it that they think they're superior to another race? Because that's what this is coming down to. One whole group, one whole community seeing itself as superior to another community for some kind of preconceived notion. So again, I want you to go in and give at least 3 examples, and this needs to be completed by Sunday.